I'm proud to introduce author Kev Harrison to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today here on Primetime and Local News to talk about your book.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, what made you decide to write your book?
Basically, below the most recent novella that I put out is set in a mine. And when I was teaching in Poland a few years ago, I had a student who was a manager for um, a coal mining company. And after we'd done lots of courses together, lots of classes together, he asked me if I wanted to go and see the inside of like one of the deepest coal mines in Europe. And when I got there, the level of darkness, like the type of darkness you get in these underground spaces, is something I had never experienced in my entire life, and it just blew me away. So I knew that I always wanted to fit a story, a scary story, into that space. And after a few years of sort of mulling it over, the idea for this particular story came about, and I thought, yeah, let's go with it. And that's how it came about.
What do you think Below brings to its genre?
In horror, there's a lot of stuff which is very bloody and visceral and gory, and I'm totally here for all of that. But when I write, I tend to write more sort of um, quiet horror, we call it, which is where it's more about the suspense, it's more about creating an atmosphere, it's more about unsettling the reader as they go along. Before building to a crescendo. So I think it very much kind of leans into that. And I also really liked, I was very happy in Below with how my protagonists, I've got three protagonists, one male and two female. And the male is the more intellectual, the more emotional, whereas the females are the more sort of like action kind of focused people. You know, they're the ones who do the free climbing and the sort of acts of violence, that kind of stuff. So I like flipping the scripts in that sense as well. So that was really fun.
What has the reader response been like to your book so far?
I've had actually a lot of positivity. I mean, obviously, like most writers, before I put the book out, I send it to beta readers, and that's like the first kind of temperature check of whether I'm onto something or whether, you know, this idea needs to go in the trash. And that was a very positive response. And then since the book's come out, it's had quite a lot of good reviews on, you know, on platforms like Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but also on Goodreads platform, and also people sharing, you know, with like book bloggers, for example, sharing on places like Instagram, on Bookstagram, hashtags, and also on Twitter. And so I think generally, yeah, it's been well received. People have enjoyed the setting in particular, and that part I said before about how the characters are kind of, you know, not necessarily how you'd expect them, not the sort of archetypal male-female roles for an adventure horror like this.
Is there an overall message to your book that you want readers to take away?
It's funny, but I always find with books like when you finish writing, you don't really know what the message is, and then you kind of have to look back at it to find out what it really is about. And I think what it's really about is about heroes and how our perspective of heroes, especially when we're young, is something which is never really all that accurate. It's always kind of steeped in that childhood naivety. And I think the central character, the sort of main one of the protagonists, Nick, I think he discovers things about his grandfather, um, who was always his hero growing up, which, you know, perhaps question that, but then perhaps other things which also, you know, reinforce that. So things are not black and white, I suppose. Things are much more gray and nuanced than we often believe.
I'd like to thank you so much again for being here and joining our program today.
I really appreciate you having given me the time on your show. So thanks very much.